When I arrived into the school parking lot at 7 in the morning, snowflakes were still falling. I teach 5th grade in Milwaukee, and I typically arrive early. It's the kind that melts on your face and sticks to your coat. Papers in my purse, coffee in my fingers, and thoughts that are still awakening. However, something stopped me cold that morning. A puppy was sitting across the street at the school bus stop, motionless and standing there as if he were waiting. The ears of a little German Shepherd puppy, about 3 or 4 months old, are too large for his head. His fur was wet, and a child's scarf was wrapped around his neck, gleaming crimson against the bleak morning. With my sneakers crunching in the snow, I didn't think I crossed the street quickly. I squatted gently as he regarded me with those deep brown eyes without running or barking. "Hey, buddy," I whispered softly. "Where's your person?" I saw it at that point. Tucked under the scarf and fastened to his collar with a small plastic clip was a note. I was trembling when I pulled it loose. Lily is her name, and she's kind. I had no choice but to take care of her, please. Just that. No phone number, no signature. My throat constricted, the puppy leaning into my hand. Lily. She was damp and cold, but she wasn't scared. She wagged her tail a little slowly and optimistically, like if she was trying to be brave. I felt a knot in my chest as I glanced up and down the street, but there was nobody there. Just the sound of new snow and a silent heartache. I felt her ribs, and she was lighter than she should have been, but I couldn't explain why. I don't know why, but she sighed a little and buried her face in my jacket. I said in a whisper, "You're safe now." Unbeknownst to me at the time, Lily was more than simply a puppy. She was the beginning of something unexpected. I brought her into my classroom in an old fleece blanket I had stashed in the trunk, and she made no noise the entire way, pressing to me as if she was worried I might vanish. As the room gradually warmed up, I sat at my desk, put on the space heater, and held her close. She began to shiver less, and her breathing became steady. She would occasionally look at the door as if she were waiting for someone, and I couldn't help but wonder who had abandoned her. Probably a child, a grown-up, wouldn't knot that scarf. And the note's calligraphy was composed of meticulous block letters that were most likely penned by trembling hands. It was painful to think that after that child left, I contacted the office and announced that I would be late for class. I didn't have an excuse, I just needed more time. To see if anyone had reported a lost dog, I then gave animal control a call. I looked at internet postings, but nothing. Lily was curled up beneath my desk, her paws tucked snug, her eyes watching everything I did. She would get excited as I shifted, and she would sigh when I spoke. She didn't cry or bark, but she just remained with me. Lily was eating like she hadn't eaten in days after I texted my neighbor to bring over some dog food in a bowl. She ate slowly and politely, but with a hunger that made my stomach turn. That afternoon, I stayed late after school, because I didn't want to take her to a shelter, not after the way she looked at me, not after everything she had already been through. I had mostly fostered cats in the past, but this felt different. When I brought her home, she paused at the doorway, as if she wasn't sure if she was allowed inside. I knelt down and reached out, and she stepped forward with her head resting against my hand and her tail low but her ears tilted back in hope. That night, she slept on the floor next to my bed, as if she needed to confirm that I was real. Perhaps I needed her just as much. When I woke up the following morning, Lily was still cuddled up next to me, breathing steadily and slowly. For an instant, I simply observed her as her chest rose and fell and her paw twitched slightly, like if she were dreaming. I hadn't had a good night's sleep in years. Around was something about having her around that made the quietness at school feel full rather than empty. She was so calm and trustworthy. Everyone saw her right away. When my pupils spotted her peeking out of my office, they gasped and exclaimed, "Is that your dog, Mr. D. Harris?" I hesitated, then said, "Her name is Lily, and she's staying with me for the time being." All I could say was, "She was the school's star by lunchtime." "She's got something special," Mrs. DeWitt, the counselor, murmured. "Not just sweet, she sees things." Lily leaned into her as if they had known each other for ages. I paused because I had experienced the same thing. Lily didn't simply notice people. She read them. During recess, Lily rested her head on the lap of Jamie, one of my pupils who sat next to her and hardly spoke. He remained motionless for 10 minutes before he began to talk quietly to me about the book he was reading. It was the most he had said in weeks. After school, I found myself looking up the requirements for therapy dog certifications and training. I wasn't sure if Lily could do it, but I had a gut feeling she already was. She followed me around the house, never more than a few feet away, and she sat in the corner while I cooked, her gaze gentle. Lily just listened as I read her, resting her head on my foot, and I found myself discussing work, my late wife, and how the house had felt too huge for too long. Just being there, without criticism or inquiries. She leaped into the bed without making a sound one night as I was turning off the lights, and I didn't stop her since I believe we both knew she belonged there. By the end of the week, Lily seemed to have been by my side all the time. She strolled around the school's hallways, as if she belonged there, introducing herself to teachers and consoling pupils without raising any alarm. Mr. Lopez, the janitor, began bringing her snacks from the vending machine. The more I watched her settle in, the more I remembered the note about the child who had written it. I couldn't get the picture of tiny hands tying that scarf, putting her at that bus stop, and walking away into the snow. The librarian had allowed her to curl up by the reading corner during free period. It was as if she was sewing herself into the building's fabric thread by thread. I then began making discreet inquiries and conversed with the bus drivers. Cheryl, who spent the entire week there, recalled seeing Lily every morning at the same time. Cheryl wiped her eyes and sat as if she was waiting for something. We all assumed she belonged to someone close, so I asked the counselor if any kids had moved recently or had changed their behavior. She gave me many names, but nothing seemed quite right until Friday afternoon, when I noticed Eli, a youngster who wasn't in my class, standing outside the playground by himself. I recognized his face, quiet, courteous, and always by himself, until I saw the edge of a red scarf protruding from his coat pocket. "Hey, Eli," I began as I approached carefully, my heart thumping. "That's a nice scarf." Of entering a room and making people feel seen. She didn't do tricks, she didn't bark or perform, she just was. And somehow, that was enough. One afternoon, we visited a group home for teens dealing with trauma. Tough crowd arms, crossed eyes down, guarded. Hearts. The staff warned me, "Don't be surprised if no one interacts." But Lily had her own plan. She walked over to the farthest corner where a boy sat alone, hoodie up, legs pulled to his chest. She didn't nudge him or ask for attention. She just laid down near his feet, curled into a ball, and closed her eyes. 5 minutes. Passed, then 10. And then his hand moved barely. Just enough to rest on her back. I didn't say a word. No one did. But I saw the way his shoulders dropped, just a little, like the armor cracked. Moments like that happened again and again, and not just with kids. One day, after a long visit, we stopped by the park to rest. An older man sat on a bench, tears in his eyes, holding a photo. Lily walked over, sat beside him. He looked at her, then at me and whispered, "She looks just like my Daisy, lost her." 2 months ago, thought I'd never feel that again. He reached down. Lily leaned into his hand. That's when I understood Lily wasn't just bringing comfort. She was returning something people thought they'd lost forever. Hope. That winter a storm rolled through Milwaukee, thick and heavy, burying the city in white silence. Schools closed, roads shut down. Power flickered across neighborhoods. The world felt still, like everything had taken a breath and held it. But Lily didn't mind the snow. She'd bound through the drifts in the backyard like a child seeing magic for the first time. Her paws left perfect prints behind her, and every time she turned to look at me, there was this light in her eyes like she wanted me to follow. I did. One night just after midnight, the power went out. The house went dark and cold. I lit candles, wrapped myself in blankets. Lily sat beside me, watching the flame flicker. That little stuffed bear still tucked near her bed, like it always was. I looked at her, this dog, who once sat waiting at a bus stop, and felt this deep ache of gratitude. I didn't say much, just reached over and touched her paw. She placed her other one on top of mine. That was the night I realized something had changed in me. I used to go home to an empty house, to silence grief, the echo of a life that used to be full. But now I came home to Lily, and it didn't feel empty anymore. The next day we bundled up and walked to the hospital. Roads were still icy, but the pediatric wing was open, and Lily had her regulars waiting, kids who didn't understand the world had shut down. All they knew was that Lily hadn't let them down. One of the nurses pulled me aside. "She's more than a therapy dog," she said. "She's an anchor for us." I smiled, blinking back tears. For me, too. We walked back home that evening through the snow. Lily walked right beside me, head high, tail swaying gently. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was surviving winter. I felt like I was living through it with someone who made the cold feel warm. Spring came slowly that year. The snow melted in patches, revealing the soft brown of earth beneath trees began to bud. Kids returned to playgrounds with muddy shoes and flushed cheeks, and Lily, she seemed to bloom with the season. Her coat grew thicker, shinier, her steps had more bounce. Everywhere we went, people called her name. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was part of the community. But something else started to grow too. At the hospital, a new girl had arrived. Her name was Amamira. 9 years old, cancer, bald, thin, quiet. She didn't speak. The first week, refused. Visitors turned her face to the wall until Lily came in. Amamira didn't react at first, just stared. Lily sat down gently by her bed, not close, just enough to be seen. The next day, we returned. Lily took the same spot, silent, patient. On the third day, Amamira whispered, "Is she real?" I nodded. "She is. She looks like the dog from my dreams," she said. Lily moved closer, slowly, carefully, and laid her chin on the edge of the bed. Amamira smiled for the first time. From that moment on, Lily was her shadow. She lay beside her during treatments, rested, her head on Amira's lap when the nausea hit. Sometimes she'd just breathe, with her slow, steady anchoring her in the moment. One day, Amamira looked at me and said, "When I feel scared, I hold her ear. It's soft, makes the fear smaller." I didn't know how to respond. Just nodded and swallowed hard. Weeks passed. Amamira got stronger. The day she left the hospital, Lily walked beside her wheelchair all the way to the door. Amir leaned down and kissed her on the head. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being my brave." That night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I looked at Lily, her head resting on my foot, and felt a weight lift from my chest. She had carried so many, including me. She didn't ask for praise or reward. She just gave. And somehow in giving, she healed. I still drive past that bus stop sometimes. The one where I first saw her sitting in the snow with that red scarf and a note that broke my heart. I drive by slowly, watching the sidewalk, the sign, the bench. And every time I see a ghost of that morning, the way she looked at me, not with fear, but with hope, like she was waiting for the world to say yes. I think about Eli too. I still see him now. And then, he's taller, smiles more. Last time we met, he brought Lily a new scarf, green, this time for spring. She wore it like a crown. People ask me if I rescued Lily. The truth is, she rescued me, She pulled me out of a life that had grown small and quiet and gave it meaning again. She turned silence into connection, loss into purpose. She reminded me that healing doesn't always come in big moments. Sometimes it walks in quietly on 4 legs, curls up beside you, and just stays. I didn't know I needed her. I didn't know how much one puppy could change everything. But now, every time Lily walks into a room, every time a child reaches out and finds comfort in her fur, I remember that moment by the bus stop. I remember the scarf, the note, the choice someone made not to abandon her, but to believe the world might still be kind. And I want to be worthy of that belief. So I keep showing up with Lily, with her soft ears and steady gaze and heart too big for her chest, because somewhere out there another kid is saying goodbye to something they love, hoping it lands in good hands. And we're here to prove that it can. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share. Your support helps us rescue more animals like Lily and bring hope where it's needed most. Be part of the Brave Paws family, because love like this deserves to be shared. Startled, he looked down and said, "Thanks." It was hers. His voice trembled, but we had to proceed. She used to accompany me on my daily stroll to the bus. Dogs are not permitted at the new location. I wanted someone kind to find her, so I knelt next to him. My mom said we had to give her up, but I couldn't take her to a shelter. You did a very brave thing. His eyes filled with tears. "Is she okay?" I said, grinning. "She is more than fine. Eli, she is transforming lives, including mine." He dabbed at his face. I replied, "Yes, buddy, I think she'd really like that." "Can I see her?" I wasn't sure what to anticipate when I took Lily to the park next to Eli's new apartment that weekend. Perhaps she wouldn't remember, or perhaps too much had changed. However, her entire body glowed when she saw him, a tiny figure in a puffy coat, close to the benches. She took a few tentative steps forward before launching into a full sprint, as her tail began to wag so quickly that it became blurry. "Lily!" Eli shouted, dropping on his knees with his arms spread wide. As if she had been holding her breath for days, she threw herself at him. He put his arms around her neck and buried his face in her fur while he sobbed and laughed. I briefly turned away, but the lump in my throat persisted. They sat like that for a while, and when the boy and puppy were reunited, neither of them was in a rush. Just 2 hearts remembering what it was like to feel protected, neither of them needing words. Eli eventually searched for, "Thank you for taking care of her." "I should be thanking you," I replied. "She's done more for me than I ever expected." He grinned shyly and wearily. "She always made me feel better when things were tough," and I nodded. "She still does. I miss her, but I'm pleased she's okay. I believe she was intended to help people. I'll keep it with her, I promised." Eli reached into his coat and got out a small stuffed bear that she used to sleep with. "Could you give it to her?" Lily smelled the toy, then put it delicately in her mouth and placed it on my shoe as if she understood it was sacred. Lily kept looking over her shoulder as we made our way back to the car until Eli was nowhere to be seen. Then she sighed deeply and snuggled against my leg. Even though she had said goodbye, it didn't feel like the end. It seemed like the start of something even more significant. With bright eyes and a small stuffed bear carefully placed in her teeth, Lily entered the school on Monday morning as if she owned it. When the children saw her, they gasped. Someone yelled, "She brought a toy!" But Lily held onto it like a badge, or a remembrance. Something changed that day. During reading time, Jaime, the quiet lad in my class, requested if Lily may sit beside his desk. I said okay, and by the end of the hour, he had read aloud to her a whole chapter without any prompting. As if Lily's presence lessened the fear of the words, later, after recess, a girl called Tara came in crying. I didn't even need to ask Lily. She just got up, walked over, and gently nudged her hand. Tara then sat on the floor, wrapped her arms around Lily's neck, and sobbed until she was unable to do so anymore. Her eyes were clearer as she got up, and she gave me a hug before heading off. I believed I was in trouble when the principal called me into her office on Thursday. She handed me a brochure instead, saying, "I think you should apply. She's already doing the job." I peered at the leaflet, and then I looked at Lily, who was sitting quietly next to me, and her head tilted as if she understood everything. I muttered, "She's not even mine." With a smirk, the principal said, "She's someone's." Now, that evening I completed the application. It inquired for experience with temperament training. I wrote what I knew, but I didn't have all the answers. That Lily had the gift of seeing others without recoiling in agony and without needing to be taught how to love. Lily was curled up at my feet in the living room with a plush bear next to her. She peered up while I typed and waved her tail, and then slowly and steadily I reached down and rubbed her head. "Together, you and I are going to help a lot of people." I meant it too. The certification procedure took weeks, despite everything. I had temperament testing, interviews, controlled loud noise exposure, wheelchairs, and abrupt movements. Trainers tried to shake, confuse, and even overwhelm Lily, but she never panicked or barked. Instead, she waited and answered with such serenity that it caused people to pause and gaze. Lily passed them all as if she was born for it. One assessor questioned, "Are you certain she's a rescue? She has the soul of an old dog." I said, "She's been through more than most." I treated the envelope as though it were holy when the final approval arrived. A certified therapy dog badge bearing her name, Lily, was inside. "You did it, sweetheart," I muttered, as I knelt next to her and fastened it onto her vest. As if she already knew, she waved her tail. We began by going to the school counseling office, then to reading groups, and then to the city children's hospital. On our first visit, Lily entered the pediatric wing as if she had been doing it all her life, and I will never forget it. One youngster, who was no more than 7 years old, had been refusing treatment for days, refused to eat or speak, and his mother treated us as though we were simply another failed attempt. Lily, however, didn't require directions. She just rubbed him over, sat next to his bed, and waited. His hand moved gently from under the cover, caressed her ear, and then he whispered, almost inaudibly, "Hi." No pressure, no gimmicks, just presence. He didn't even look at her at first. His mother inhaled sharply. The nurses halted their work. Lily closed her eyes and rested her head on his tummy. Each subsequent visit felt like a ripple from that moment, like seeing a storm dissolve and the light emerge. Children who hadn't laughed in weeks burst out laughing. Her weight next to them provided solace to those who were unable to sleep. She was held by her parents as if they hadn't held anyone for years. She was more than just a therapy dog. She was healing people in ways I still don't understand. Every night when we got home, she would curl up next to me with that same calmness, as if she were bearing their suffering so they wouldn't have to. News of Lily began to circulate. The puppy, who waited at a bus stop and discovered her purpose, was featured in a brief segment on local news. I started crying when I saw the headline. With his mother's consent, Eli was also interviewed. He stood next to her, holding her old scarf, and remarked, "I didn't give her up. I gave her a chance." I was struck by that line. We soon had invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and even a youth shelter. Lily became a light wherever we went. She had a peaceful manner,